everyone, a very warm welcome to today's session. I am Shweta Roy, your English teacher, and I welcome you all to English and More. Hope you all are doing well. So I know that I'm recording this video after a long time. I had been a little occupied, but anyways guys, I am back again and I hope everyone is there with me and ready to start with a new chapter, the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Right now, this is a beautiful chapter, so I would request you all to stay tuned throughout and concentrate, listen to the explanation very, very carefully. It is so very universal and applicable. It is relatable to today's context as well. Right? So about the author, guys, this author Alphonse, he's a French author. Okay, so he's one of the most iconic names of French literature. He was a novelist, a dramatist, as well as a short story writer, and he was a part of the French naturalist movement. Right, he started his career as a school teacher, but then he got tired of the vocation. He gave up teaching and then he decided to go to Paris to become a journalist. Right, now there he was hired by someone called Lee Figaro, and he wrote some plays which made him popular in his literary circle. Later he was also hired as a private secretary by Duke of Mornay, who happens to be a powerful minister of Napoleon III. Right? Now, that was all about the author. Some interesting facts you should definitely know about, a little bit about the author, whose piece you are studying, right? Now, talking about the background of this particular story, a very, very important points to be noted, guys, because this has some historical background. Okay, so I'm sure you must have read in your history about Franco-Prussian War. If in case you haven't, then do some research about Franco-Prussian War. Okay, so the French district of Alsace and Lorraine, they were captured by the Germans. Okay, so that is the historical background upon which this story is based, called The Last Lesson. As the name itself suggests, it's definitely going to talk about the very last lesson. Now, why was it the last lesson? Let us understand with the help of this beautiful story. Now, there was this new master who was to come next day in the school in order to teach German instead of French. Now, we all know about Indian independence movement, and we can definitely relate this to our movement, to our independence movement as well, right? Because we were also captured by the British. Now, this story tells the effect of this news. What news? That this place was captured. Okay, and this also showcases what is the theme of this particular story, that the oppressor not just wants to capture the territory, but it also wants to dominate over the language and culture. See, in our nation as well, the same thing happened, right, in our case. So our language, our culture, even today, it is so very dominated. Unknowingly we do it, but we still follow the British culture, and we are kind of forgetting the Indian culture, right? So yeah, and that is precisely because of the British domination, British who ruled over India for so long, right? So here also it talks about the linguistic domination. Okay, and that is the lesson, that is the last lesson. Now, how is it the last lesson? Let us see. It is also talking about the subjugation of people, taking away the identity of the subjugated people, the oppressed people. So the oppressed people here were the French, right? Now, this is a short story which is set against the backdrop of Franco-Prussian War. Okay, and who is the narrator in this story? A little boy named Franz. Okay, now the story is narrated from his perspective, and it talks about the occupation of Lorraine in the year 1870. So this is the year, guys. This is the year 1870. Okay, when Bismarck's army stormed the area and held it under the Prussian control right until World War I. So this is the historical context. You should understand the historical context to understand the chapter. Right. Now the story provides us a memorable glimpse of how one's language is rooted to one's identity. Our identity, we are all Indians. So our identity is rooted in our language, in the mother tongue that we speak. But today, are we speaking the mother tongue? How often? Very less, right? So why has that happened? See, English is something which is now a global language, but anyways, we are, mostly, still it is a foreign language, and we are mostly using this particular language, right? So the story provides us brief yet memorable glimpse of how one's identity is rooted in one's language, and we should never let go of that identity. Let me give you a very practical example. When we speak in our mother tongue, whatever it is, Hindi, whatever is your regional language, your mother tongue, maybe it may be Hindi, it may be Telugu, Tamil, Bengali, Odia, whatever it is. When you speak a paragraph, do you actually speak in pure Hindi, pure Bengali, pure Marathi? Or do we often speak broken Hindi, broken Marathi? We use a lot of English words even when we are speaking our mother tongue. And we find it very difficult to speak purely in that language. Think about it, right? So, here also it highlights how language comes to surface in times of crisis when one's identity is most threatened. Right? So, when our identity is threatened, language is something which comes to the fore. Okay, now this last lesson is a gentle reminder why we should not take our language for granted, and that's precisely because this new NEP, new education policy is bringing back the importance of our languages, right? It's very important that we learn and remember and flourish our languages, right? So how important it is to love and learn one's language. So loving one's language does not mean disrespecting the other language. So if I love my mother tongue, it does not mean that I don't love English. See, we love all the languages. Language is not something to be hated, but it should not be imposed upon you, isn't it? If it is imposed, then it is subjugating you. So I cannot impose you to speak any other language. If I am doing that, then I am, subjugating you, right? But also at this current time, modern time, we are global citizens. So we need to think globally. So we need to embrace the global language. That is the reality. But while embracing the global language, it should not mean that we should forget our mother tongue. That is also very, very important, right? So we need to learn our own language. We should not disrespect or humiliate our mother tongue. That is something which is very important, and that is what we learn from this particular lesson, right? So we should not take our language for granted. So it should not be that our mother tongue we all know, right? We all learn from the very beginning. And if somebody is always communicating in mother tongue, we insult that person. We should not do that. You have your right to communicate and express in whatever language you are comfortable in, right? That is something which people should not take away from you. Now coming to this particular story, which begins one fine morning when we find Franz hurrying off to school, and he was scared of his French teacher. M. Hamel is the name of the French teacher, and he was teaching the language French, and he was supposed to question the students on the past participle, right? So he had not studied that, okay, and he was very worried. With great effort, he resists the temptation to bunk his class. So how many of you do this? Whenever you're not prepared with anything, you think about bunking the class, and you also do. Many of us, right? So he goes unwillingly to school. He is reluctant to go to school. The reason being, he was not prepared with his lesson, right? Now he sees a crowd. When he steps inside the school, he sees a crowd gathered around a bulletin board. You all have bulletin boards in your schools as well, the notice board, right? So what is a bulletin board? It is the medium through which news is reached. News is, communicated. But in their case, it was a bad news that their district had lost the battle. Okay, so for them it was news about it. The bulletin board used to spread news about lost battles, droughts, and orders of commanding officers. Right? Now Franz, because that was the war period. Okay, so Franz banks heavily on the usual commotion of the class, and he plans to quietly slip into the bench without attracting the attention of M. Hamel. We often do this, right? So we quietly, stealthily steal our glances and sit without attracting the attention of our teacher, right? However, he finds that the garden outside is silent on a Sunday, as on a Sunday morning. Now, it was a weekday, it was the school time, but still there was silence, and the silence is compared to the silence of a Sunday morning. So Sunday morning nobody goes to school, so the school remains silent. But even today it had that silence. Why? So he peers through the windows and he sees the classmate. He's frightened, he's ashamed, and he opens the door and he enters the class. Surprisingly, M. Hamel, whom he expected to scold, to reproach him, to reprimand him, is not doing anything. He's silent. He does not even scold him for being late. Now Franz goes to his desk and he notices the teacher, who has put on a green coat, a frilled shirt, and black silk cap. This clothing is important. Why? Because this is usually worn on special occasions like award ceremony, etc. So what was special about that day? Why was why was Miss M. Hamel wearing those clothes which are usually worn on special occasion? Let's think and let's understand by reading. He also sees the residents of his village all huddled up in the classroom. Why? What was so special today? He sees old Hosser, the former mayor, the former postmaster, and many others sitting on the back bench of the class, and all of them had a solemn look, serious look on their faces. Now he is guessing, just as you and me, we are all guessing what is the reason. We are also guessing. They were also guessing. Franz was also guessing, and suddenly, M. Hamel, he says something. He drops the bombshell. Now see what is the teacher saying. My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of these two districts. Okay? The new master comes tomorrow. That means M. Hamel, who is a French teacher, will no longer come to school. Why? Because there will be no French. And this was their final French lesson. And therefore, I want you to be very attentive. Now think about it. Their language, French, no matter how much you dislike any of your subject or any of your languages and your teacher, but if somebody says that this is your last lesson, especially a language with, through which your identity is connected, it is difficult right now at this stage to relate to it, because we are not in, nobody is taking away our identity here. But think about the state of France and the other French people who would lose their own mother tongue. So mother tongue is something which is so very near to us, it is so close to us, it is our identity, it is who we are. And if somebody tells you, and it is a language through which we are so comfortable, it comes naturally, and if somebody says that you are not supposed to speak in that language at all, it becomes so very uncomfortable, isn't it? So this was a terrible shock. So see, when you are with your family, your friends, you speak the language that you are comfortable in, and that is mostly our mother tongue, right? And if somebody stops you from speaking that language at all, somebody is saying that, this is the last time when you are speaking, think about that situation. It finally dawns on him what the bulletin on the town hall meant. So gradually he is realizing, and now he is regretting. Why is that regret? Because he had never taken his French lesson seriously, and he used to, peek at the bird's nest, go sliding on the Sahara desert. That means he used to indulge in different other activities in order to escape his French lessons, right? Now, so when we lose something, then we understand the presence, the importance of it, the significance of it. He also feels sad for M. Hamel because he had given 40 years of his service. He understands the regret of the village folks at not having taken their. So why are they gathered? Because that was their last chance of learning the language, and from the next time they are never going to have this chance. Now the recitation of the lessons begin, and M. Hamel calls little Franz to recite the rules of participle. To his great embarrassment, he is completely lost. He fumbles. The teacher does not scold, however. He had not learnt his lesson, and he fumbles. He's lost. He's not able to deliver that. But the teacher, usual scenario, teacher is going to scold you. Why haven't you learned? Why haven't you prepared? But look at M. Hamel. He doesn't scold. Rather, he reveals the sad truth. What does he say? Very important point, very important statement. Every day we have said to ourselves, I have plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. We all postpone it to tomorrow. What if tomorrow never comes? And that was exactly what was happening with Franz. And now you see where we've come out. That's the great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So we had postponed learning. Hamel says, in part, it is Franz's parents and himself who are to blame, because they had never taken that seriously, and they had not inculcated the same to Franz. And then he goes on to describe the beauty of French language, stating that it's the most beautiful and logical language, and people should be able to guard the language and never forget it. Okay, and we can relate this to our mother tongues as well. And then the most memorable lines, because when the people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to the language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. So our language is the key through which we can unlock our prison, our bondage. By saying this is a very important line. I want you all to mark this line, because questions can come from this line. So he begins the grammar lesson, and this time Franz, who had otherwise been always distracted and peeking through the window and indulged in different activities, this time what is the difference in his approach? He is waiting, he is listening so carefully and so attentively, right? The grammar lesson is followed by a writing lesson, and everybody gets down, and the class is turned to a pin-drop silence. It's filled with pin-drop silence. Once some beetles fly, but nobody pays attention to it. Otherwise, not even little kids. Little kids, you easily distracted, right? They are always into something or the other apart from the class. But this time, just the opposite. The cooing of the pigeons on the roof makes Franz wonder whether the Germans will make the birds sing in German as well. Very important line, last line. Even the pigeons who were cooing, they have their own language. So this is a very sarcastic line. It makes Franz wonder, because see, they had German people had dominated their language, French, France's language. Now, it is also making them wonder whether they will also subjugate even the rest of the beings. They had subjugated the people, but are they going to subjugate even the pigeons who are free? Very, very important line. And then Franz looks up, he sees M. Hamel scanning the entire class, and the writing of the lesson is followed by the babies chanting. Okay, even old Hauser joins the recital with tears in his eyes. Everybody got so emotional because that they are bidding adieu to their language, and with that is connected their identity. Then the clock strikes 12 and the Prussians sound the trumpet and M. Hamel freezes. Very important. He tries to say something, but he is overwhelmed with his emotion. He is also very emotional. And with a choked voice, he says, he scribbles, "My friend," said he, I, but something, he was not able to speak. Something choked him. He was overwhelmed with the emotional feelings. And he writes the letters, "Vive la France." I'm not sure whether I'm pronouncing this correct because this is French and I am not aware of French. I don't know French, but anyways, this means long live France. Now, we have understood the lesson. We have read the lesson. Now we will see, or the summary of the lesson. Now we will see what does the author mean to imply through this lesson. Now this is a poignant story, a very heart-touching story, bringing us to our realities as well, about what it means to speak one's language and how closely one's identity is linked to the language that we speak. And this is talking about chauvinism, linguistic chauvinism. Chauvinism is domination, okay, of one's race, and how this linguistic chauvinism of one race can lead to the enslavement of the other. Okay, and what we as individuals can do to overcome this challenge. Right, so there are themes of war, identity, linguistic chauvinism, uncertainty, and very important is displacement. Who was displaced? M. Hamel, who had served the school for 40 years. Now the story is from narrated from the perspective of a little boy, Franz, instead of an adult figure, and that is the power of this story. And that shows us the magnitude, that gives us the magnitude of the damage that had been done when we are neglecting our language. So this is also making us think of not neglecting our own language. Now, this child narrator represents the future of France, because the future lies in youth. So you all are the future of India, just as France was the future of France and French language. His musings about the cooing of pigeon, I told you this is very important. It is a sharp critique on, again, the linguistic chauvinism and the repressive nature of Prussian regime, because he was thinking whether they would be repressing even the pigeons and depriving them of even their language. And it also hints to the limits beyond which they will never be able to assert their brute force. So yes, they will be able to assert their force on the people, but what about the birds? So that is the critique. Now there is a contrast which is used at the end of the lesson. Please note that when the striking of the church clock is followed by the recital of the Catholic prayer, simultaneously the Prussians sound their trumpet, and the two contrasting worlds, so Prussians sounding their trumpet and the church bell and the recital, these are the two contrasting worlds. One, the church and the prayer is the world of peace. It presents the world of peace, and the Prussians and their trumpet, that is the world of violence. So violence and peace, they are coming together. Okay, they meet at a brief moment in time. And it is in this moment that the lesson comes to an end. The meeting of violence and peace. The time when these meet. Very, very important. Then we come across the theme of identity and language, which is so prominent, right? The connection between the two is expressed when M. Hamill suggests that by neglecting of the language, the residents there have given up their identity. As I told you constantly, that identity is a very important factor here. The theme of uncertainty is presented at the very first paragraph of the story through the eyes of the narrator when he learns the fact that M. Hamill is going to deliver his last lesson. Okay. Also, the line spoken by M. Hamill, she is the district, okay, puts off learning till tomorrow. That shows again the mistake of not recognizing the present uncertainty, presence of uncertainty in our lives. Everything is so very temporary and uncertain, and we keep putting things to tomorrow, right? So that is something we need to realize, and we take things in our lives so very for granted, be it our language, our culture, which we are forgetting, which is fading away from our lives. So this is a gentle reminder. Be it people, he had taken M. Hamill for granted. We also take people in our lives for granted, right? Until we do not realize the importance of things until and unless it is the last moment. Finally, M. Hamill is being evicted after 40 years of service. So definitely theme of displacement. So when displacement happens, his individuality is not taken care of, right? So this is an important point to be noted, because if M. Hamill's character sketch comes, then this is something which you need to bring out. Okay, so he is not an individual. He is not looked upon as an individual by the Prussians. Rather, he is the embodiment. He is just another agent of the language. So therefore, he should be displaced, and he should be replaced with one of the German language. This is what war does to people. They do not recognize the humanity. They do not recognize the individuality. Whether it is a soldier on the battlefield or a teacher in the classroom, war does not take into account the individuality or the humanity of any of these things. So he was not just a teacher for them. They looked at them through the lens of politics. So he is a politically dangerous element in the eyes of the Prussian regime. So his eviction is not a linguistic change, but a carefully politicized decision. Very, very important point for the character sketch of M. Hamill. The last lesson is, as this story is relatable even today. When it was written, then also it was relatable. Even today it is relatable, right? With the imposition of language in different areas by various regimes, it should be clear that we need to learn and respect our own language. So one should not be as naive as the residents of the district where French was replaced by German. Right, so the last lesson, and we should not commit the same mistake as in 21st century as it was done in the 19th century. And after having read this story, now your homework is to explain this line. When people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. Think about it. So it's definitely hints I'll give you. When people are enslaved is when they are captured, okay? When they are dominated, suppressed. As long as they hold fast to their language. So if we are clinging to our language, we are not forgetting that. Language is also related to our identity. So as long as we do not forget our identity, our individuality, and completely surrender, we are holding our key to our prison. The prison of domination. So you need to explain this with the help of some examples from the text, and that is your homework. So I hope, guys, you have understood the chapter and understood the themes, and also understood how is it so very relevant even in today's context. So please do not forget to like the video in case you have, and also share this video amongst your friends. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, and please do post your comments in the homework section, because in the comment section, because I hardly receive your comments on the homework section, guys. This in the comment section for your homework question. This is very important. You need to practice writing your answers. So as I told you, as we learned in this lesson, do not forget the importance. Okay, do not keep postponing it to the next day. So and make the mistake as these people had done in the story. Okay, so please be proactive in commenting on the homework question. Okay, so thank you, take care, bye, see you very soon, please stay tuned.